My name is Kathy, and ever since I was little, I loved my dad dearly. He was the kind of man who always put his family first and himself last. He made sure my brother and I never lacked anything and took care of my stay-at-home mom too. He would hand over his entire paycheck to her, never complaining even when he didn't have a dime to his name. Thanks to my dad, my brother and I lived fulfilling lives. I thought our family of 4 would continue to live this way forever. But life can be so cruel. Suddenly, I lost my dad, the man I loved so much. It was just when I was in my senior year of high school and my brother was in 8th grade. That day, like any other, Dad left for work as usual, but then he suddenly collapsed at his workplace and was rushed to the hospital. By the time my brother and I got to the hospital, Dad was already gone. Mom arrived an hour later. My brother and I were sobbing uncontrollably, but Mom was strangely calm. She was shocked by Dad's sudden death, sure, but she shed no tears. "Mom, what are we gonna do now? Dad's gone," I asked her. Mom was a stay-at-home wife, which meant she had no income. Without Dad, how could our family survive? But Mom didn't answer my question. "Mom, are you listening? Dad's dead." Then Mom let out a big sigh and bluntly said, "What's done is done. Can you stop crying so loud? It's giving me a headache." Wait, what? What did she say? What's done is done about Dad's death? Sure, no one could have predicted or prevented such a thing. But to talk about Dad, who supported us all these years, like that was just too cruel. For the first time, I felt a surge of disgust towards my mom. I had always felt that Mom was spoiled and overly reliant on Dad, but to maintain her indifference, even in such a situation. Mom laughed scornfully at my glaring face. "What are you glaring at? It's not like it's my fault he's dead." And so our nightmare began. As soon as Dad's funeral was over, Mom started bringing strange men into our home. We were living in a rented condominium, and the room that Dad used to use was taken over by one of these men. Our everyday life took a dramatic turn. Mom and her lover treated my brother and me like nuisances. They would raise their voices at us if anything didn't go their way. Mom just watched with a smirk, never scolding the man. The hellish situation went on for months, and my brother and I were at our breaking point. Mom had always managed all of Dad's salary, saving a portion of it in her own bank account while cutting down Dad's allowance. It seemed she was using that money to have fun with her lover. We couldn't take this life anymore. I had to change our situation for my brother's sake. With this in mind, I decided to look for a part-time job. I was ready to give up on college, planning to work immediately after high school. As I was contemplating all this, a man claiming to be a lawyer showed up one day. "This was commissioned by your father," he said. Before his passing, the lawyer then pulled out Dad's will. Mom appeared taken aback by the lawyer's sudden visit, unaware of the truth he was about to unveil. The lawyer clarified the situation to us. Your father had realized that something was wrong with his health early on, but he believed that if he didn't work, the family would be in a bind. So he wanted to leave something behind for a rainy day. As the lawyer unsealed our father's will, he explained it in layman's terms. Your father intended to divide his $20 million fortune by giving $10 million to your mom and $5 million each to your kids. Upon hearing this, Mom eagerly addressed the lawyer. "So when do I get the money?" "As soon as all the official proceedings are complete. The funds will be transferred shortly." Without skipping a beat, Mom prepared a pen and signed the necessary documents. The talk was complex for us kids, but we decided to accept our father's legacy gratefully. A few days later, my brother and I made the decision to leave the house. I started to consider what would be essential for us living on our own, and what the bare minimum actions would be. If we were leaving the house, we needed to find a new place to live, but would anyone be willing to rent a property to high school students? While pondering, I remembered that the parents of a middle school friend owned an apartment. The next day, I visited their house, promptly explained the situation, and asked, "Since we have our father's legacy and I plan to start a part-time job, could you introduce us to a good apartment?" In response, my friend's parents proposed, "Since we can't legally lease to high school students, how about we rent you a room in our apartment? You just need to pay the monthly rent." "Yes, I'd be grateful. Thank you so much." My friend's parents were worried until the end, but when they perceived my strong determination, they finally encouraged me, saying, "You can count on us anytime you need help." That night, I brought up the matter to Mom. "Mom, Sam and I are planning to leave the house soon. "What are you planning to do?" she asked. "We're going to live together, just the two of us." I suppose our affairs didn't matter to Mom in the least. Without even looking at me, Mom dismissed us nonchalantly. "Well, do as you please. I couldn't care less what happens to you two. It'll actually be better without you two around, so you won't get in the way of my time with him." At that moment, my barely lingering affection for Mom crumbled completely. "Okay, I understand. Thanks for everything, Mom." With a heavy dose of sarcasm towards Mom, I left the house I had lived in for years. Starting to live with my brother turned out to be way more challenging than I imagined. Early morning paper routes, then school, and a part-time job at the supermarket after returning home. I didn't want to touch the money left by our father, so I tried to cover living expenses with my part-time wage as much as possible. At the supermarket, they gave me the boxed meals scheduled for disposal. That became our dinner. I knew my brother, being a middle schooler, would want some fun, so I gave him a modest monthly allowance. "Here you go, Sam. This is your allowance for the month. But you hardly spend anything on yourself," he said. "Don't worry about me. Having fun is an essential experience too, you know." Despite his reservations, I insisted on giving my brother his allowance. I felt guilty about the financial constraints he had to endure because of me, so I wanted to do at least the bare minimum for him. Our life continued like that for a while, and before we knew it, it was fall. The buzz among my classmates was all about where they were going to college. To me, those conversations felt like such a luxury, I couldn't think of anything else. But my thoughts were consumed with where I would work after graduation and how I would help my brother get to college. One day, I happened to have the day off from my part-time job. My brother and I were enjoying a leisurely lunch at home when the apartment doorbell rang. Who could it be? When I opened the door, there was Mom. "Mom," I said, surprised. "Don't you dare call me that. Now, where is your banking card?" "A banking card?" Mom suddenly barged in, demanding the banking card, and I was totally lost. She ignored my confusion and shouted at me to hurry up and hand it over. "Wait a minute, why so sudden?" I tried to ask, but she wouldn't listen. She even went so far as to march straight into the house, rummaging through the rooms. "Hey Mom, stop it." My brother tried to stop her, but she just pushed him aside with a curt, "Shut up." I rushed to my brother's side, pleading with Mom to stop. Eventually, she found the banking card in a drawer. After checking the untouched balance in the account, she smirked. "Oh, there's quite a bit left. You're just like me, doing so well. How admirable." Disgusted, I glared at her, and that must have irked her because she shoved me next. "What's with that look? Just do as I say. I'm your mother." She left with our banking cards. I felt so helpless and sank to the floor. Why, after all the hard work to get this far, does she have to ruin everything again? The peaceful life my brother and I had finally managed to grab. I worked so hard without even touching our father's inheritance, all for my brother's future. "Sis," my brother comforted me as I cried. I felt pathetic for not being able to protect my only brother. Just then, I remembered something, the one letter that the lawyer had given me when he visited a while back. He asked me to give it to you without letting Mom know. "Open this only if you're in trouble," he had said. The lawyer, seemingly aware of the situation with Mom, had discreetly handed me an envelope. Life with my brother had started right after, and in all the bustle, I completely forgot about it. I opened the letter from my deceased father and read its contents. It was an address. It was somewhere far away from where we lived, an area completely unknown to us. However, I figured there must be a reason my father left it. I decided to go to that place with my brother. We got on a plane, and then we took a taxi from the airport. What awaited us was a house with a grand gate, something you'd only see in movies or TV shows. "What is this gigantic house?" My brother seemed overwhelmed by the sheer size of the house. As we stood there, a burly man came out from inside. "Oh my, you've come." We found a letter from our father. Your address was in it," I explained. The man began to speak to someone on the phone. After a brief moment, the man changed his demeanor and said, "Please come in," inviting us into the mansion. In the great room to which we were guided, an elderly woman was sitting alone. Upon seeing us, she greeted us. "Kathy and Sam, right? Nice to meet you. I'm your grandmother." Grandmother. We were shocked and couldn't help but exclaim loudly. We had never heard any stories about our father's family, nor did we even know we had a grandmother. Not just that. But who would have thought that our father's childhood home would be such an impressive estate? Since you've come, does that mean my son has passed away? Her son, that is, our father. I gave a small nod to her. Grandmother, interrupting me, grandmother took out a large bag and handed it to me. This is something your father left with me. He said if they ever come to visit, give this to them. When I opened the bag, it was packed with countless bundles of bills, the likes of which I'd never seen before. Ignoring our surprise, grandmother began to explain. We had a falling out a long time ago, and for a while, we didn't talk at all. But about a year and a half ago, he suddenly showed up and left this bag. According to her, her father's family, in other words, our grandmother, was part of a long-established gang. Our father had refused to take over the family business and had cut ties with his grandmother after a big fight. When we heard it was a gang, it all made sense. That grand entrance. Of course, it was a surprise to learn that our father's family was involved in a gang. This turn of events was just as astonishing. Perhaps our father knew about Mom's cheating habits. Even when it came to the inheritance, there is a limit to what we, as minors, could do. The allocation of the money was likely just for formality's sake. What our father really wanted to leave us was that letter with grandmother's address on it. Our father had been planning this in case anything happened to us. I was moved to tears by our father's kindness. I took the time to explain everything, how he had been treated poorly by Mom and her lover, and how Mom had taken our father's inheritance. After hearing everything, grandmother told us, "You don't need to give up on life because of your mother. I'll get that money back for you. You two need to live your lives with gratitude." We took the bag of money our father left us and returned to our apartment. With this money, I could let my brother go to college as much as he wanted. In addition, our grandmother even promised to pay for my college tuition. Thanks to our father and grandmother, my once abandoned hope of attending college was fulfilled. "I'm so happy for you," my younger brother said, giving me a warm smile. He too must have been holding up for a long time. "Sam, it's thanks to you sticking with me that we got through this." "Thank you," I said, and he shyly sniffled. A few days later, grandmother visited our apartment, returning the banking card Mom had taken from us. She had used one of her employees to locate Mom and get our card back. Indeed, quite the gangster. Thinking about it was a little scary, but amusing at the same time. "I made that woman promise she won't bother you two ever again. You can live in peace now," grandmother said. "Thank you, grandmother." "But how?" I asked. "That's not something children need to worry about. From now on, live your lives to the fullest," she said before leaving, giving us those encouraging words. There's a postscript to the story. Mom's lover. Actually, he was after Mom's money. When grandmother took back the bank card, he promptly dumped Mom. Having exhausted our father's inheritance, Mom is now desperately searching for a job. A woman who has been a housewife all her life from now on will undoubtedly be challenging. However, thanks to my grandmother, peace returned to our lives. I passed the entrance exams for my first choice university and am still working part-time, trying to avoid using our father's money as much as possible. I later entered the workforce and my brother started college. Now that we've reached this point, we're safe. Childhood was long and tough, but there were kind adults watching over us. Our father's lawyer, the couple who rented us the apartment, our gangster grandmother, and our beloved father. "Dad, we're off." Every morning, my brother and I pay respects to our father's portrait. We'll keep supporting each other, so please watch over us from heaven, Dad. Somehow, it felt like Dad's portrait was smiling.